You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. Hello, my friends. Before we dive into today's episode, I've got a very big announcement for you. Registration is officially open for our 2025 Solo Adventure Summit. Now, this is our free 2-day virtual event that happens June 5th and 6th, where you're going to get to learn everything you need to feel confident, prepared, and inspired to get out on your own solo adventures this year. And we've got 10 incredible outdoor educators, adventurers, and safety experts, including myself, lined up to teach you workshops on solo backpacking, outdoor self-defense, safety planning, mindset shifts, and wildlife encounters, and so much more. It's the kind of support and community that I personally wish I had when I was just getting started, especially when it comes to getting out there solo. And the best part about this event is it's totally free to attend live. So if you've been craving more confidence, more clarity, and even more connection around your solo goals, this is your moment. Do not miss this event. It's our biggest event of the year. You can head to shedreamsofalpine.com/summit to grab your free ticket. I will also link that in the show notes. Again, it's shedreamsofalpine.com/summit and grab your free ticket. I hope to see you there. It's going to be amazing. You guys are going to love it. Now, let's dive into today's episode. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. You are listening to episode 33. And today I have someone very special with me. Her name is Kim. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but she's from Bear Safety and More. So we'll get more into that company and all the things that she does there. We are so excited to have you on the podcast, Kim. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here too. Thanks, Allison.
Why don't you maybe give us a little bit of a background about yourself and what you do, Kim?
Sure. Well, I actually grew up in Ontario, Canada, with a father who was a science teacher and biologist. So I grew up a lot of the time in the outdoors. I had two very rambunctious brothers, and my mom was always like, "Get outside! Don't come back unless you're hungry or you're injured."
I love it. Were they older or younger?
They were both younger, but that didn't mean they couldn't fight.
Yeah.
So
I just have two older brothers, so I was like, can relate.
yeah. So my dad was often taking us out paddling and hiking and fishing and camping. So I always loved the outdoors. And when I got a bit older, my best friend from high school moved out west to the Rocky Mountains in Canada, and I was like, "Oh, I want to go to Banff National Park. It'd be so cool." So I moved out there in my late teens, and I just fell in love with it. I was like, "This place is crazy. Like, people live with grizzly bears and they like walk through your backyard. Like, what is going on here? Like, you could wake up in the morning and open the blinds and there could be like a bear eating like an elk carcass in your yard. Like, it's just wild."
Yeah, Banff is just epic. It has a profound impact on you. I feel like no matter where you're coming from, Michael and I felt the same way when we visited.
Yeah, it's a very, very special place for sure, and a protected place too, right? Where we want to try to get people to understand they need to be respectful of the wildlife that live here.
Yes.
And so I went to university, and while I was in school, I wrote letters everywhere trying to get a job in wildlife conservation, and I got really fortunate that I got a call and I got a job here in Banff National Park working as what I thought was a wildlife interpreter. And
Mm.
I thought I would be educating the public about bears and wildlife, which I did, but it
Yeah.
was actually a bear babysitter job. And they didn't tell
Okay.
me. And so they gave me this truck with lights on it. And I was like, cool. It's like I'm a ranger.
I love it.
Oh, and like a loudspeaker. And then they taught me how to use telemetry gear so I could actually track GPS and VHF collared bears and watch their movements and try to keep them out of trouble with people. So that's where the whole bear babysitting thing come in.
Ah.
And so I spent my spring and summers every year during university coming out west and doing that and when I was in university. And so I fell in love with the animals and I was like, wow, they put up with so much with human beings. It's amazing to me that how few people get mauled by bears and yet like how dumb we are around them. And
Right.
so I was like, that's it. I'm dedicating my life to wildlife conservation and conservation in particular. And then when I moved to Canmore, Alberta, just outside of the park when I graduated, and I got a call that a woman had been killed by
Mm.
a grizzly bear out for a trail run with her friends.
Yeah.
And she had backed away, climbed a tree, and unfortunately, maybe she'd read some old bear information, and there's a lot of really outdated information on bear safety. And so
Ah.
she climbed a tree, the bear climbed up the tree after her and pulled her out of the tree, and she was killed. And so I got a call asking if I could start some type of wildlife management conservation strategy for the Bow Valley. I'm only in my mid 20s, just graduated from university. I'm like, I have no idea how to do that, but I'll fake it to make it.
Yes.
Uh,
So much of
and
our
then,
20s is like that. You're like, okay,
right?
yes. Say yes first and figure it out later.
Exactly. Like, oh yeah, I'm resourceful. And then I ended up creating this coalition with three levels of government and community members, environment
Mm.
organizations, and turned it into a charitable organization called WildSmart and ran that for 10 years and had lots of volunteers and folks that really cared about the program. And then I got a call from the oil and gas sector here in northern Alberta asking if I would start my own consulting company. So I decided to start my own business and called it Bear Safety and More. And now I travel all over North America teaching bear and wildlife safety courses, doing research, and helping people understand how to live, work, and play in places where these amazing animals live.
Yes, I love it. And such important work. And we're going to kind of dive more into that and like what you do and some of your tips just here on the podcast. But kind of like thinking back to about where we connected, I want to say like maybe we just came across each other on Instagram first. Like I
We
can't
did
remember the
totally.
exact interaction. I don't know if you remember, but I just remember connecting with you on Instagram and then being like, we have to have Kim come to some of our events. And yeah, was our first time partnering with you in our first time running the Solo Adventure Summit was 2023. So yes, we invited you to be part of our Solo Adventure Summit in 2023, and then we've like maintained that partnership over the years. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, during the COVID period,
yes.
I thought I was going to lose my business because it went like totally
Ah,
right. I was driving and flying all over the place. So I
yeah.
started this project where I was offering courses to the public, to recreationists online on demand
Yes.
or like Zoom classes. And I think that was a piece for where we started to connect. I was seeing a lot of women showing interest in learning about bear and wildlife safety. And in fact,
Yeah.
majority of the people that take like our courses online are women who are really wanting to learn how to be safer and get outside and do things like solo hiking and camping and backpacking. So it was like, whoa, this makes so much sense for us to work together. It's wild.
Yes. Yeah, that's totally when it was. So before 2020, you would say your business was more kind of like consulting in person, going to things, and then you kind of do you do a mix now of both in person and virtual events and your courses?
Do so about it's amazing. I went from 100% in person to only 20% now.
Ah,
So the
wow.
majority
Yeah.
of it's quite a difference. So yeah, I majority of the time I'll either teach a class on Zoom and people can be anywhere in the world. And then of course we have a lot of online courses as well, and people are much more interested these days in taking courses at their own pace, right? And I always
Yes.
jokingly say like, call your best friend that you go hiking with and spend time in the outdoors in and tell them you're having a beer beer, barbecue, and bear
Bear
party
safety.
at your house.
I
Bear
love
safety
it.
party. And like no one's not going to show up for beer and barbecue, right? And then when you're like, I guess what? There's also going to be bears, and then they'll be like, what? And they're like, you're learning about bear safety today because I'm not going outside with you until you know how to behave. Because if we head outside together and you run, I'm going to lose it. So
Yes. Yeah, no, it's so important. Yes, like you just mentioned something really important, like getting everybody in your group on the same page with safety and wildlife safety, any wildlife safety, bears, moose, mountain lions, like that way they know what to do. So much of being a leader is like and inviting other people on adventures is like making sure they're safe and they know what to do when you come up into a sticky situation too. So that's like yeah, so something so important, which is why I always tell people, just kind of like making a little side adventure here on the conversation, um, why going in groups isn't necessarily always safer. It just depends on the group that you're going with and like how well educated and informed they are. Like sometimes people, I think, immediately assume if I'm in a group, it's automatically more safe. And I just sometimes disagree with that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, I think that's absolutely fair. My brother actually is just leaving on a 2 month adventure paddling trip from BC all the way through Yukon and into Alaska. And my first question is like, well, what's the training level of this person you're going with? Are they going to
Yeah.
be a hindrance to you? And in fact, they were. They had no first aid training, no bear safety training. Like honestly, if like you couldn't rely on them to help in this in emergency situation. So it really goes back to how important it is to be able to take care of yourself when you're
Right.
outside. It's key. And I mean, I do absolutely tell people in bear safety that if you can travel in groups, do so. But I
Yeah.
think you really need to reflect on what, your own set of skill sets when you're out there.
Totally, totally. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your story, kind of
Mhm.
what made you decide to become a wildlife biologist and what inspired you to start your business. You said you started a program, the first program that you started was when you were working in Canmore. What did you call it? It was like,
Called Wild Smart. And actually, I never worked as a wildlife biologist. I work as like
oh,
a specialist, like in
oh,
my
okay,
area. So
wildlife
yeah, yeah.
specialist. Okay.
Hmm.
So, yeah, did you just kind of get in? I forget, like, back me up a little bit. Did
Mm-mm.
you study in wildlife at school, or did you kind of like learn from the school of experience and getting like those opportunities to work in these spaces?
I did both, yeah.
You did
So
both. Nice.
I did a few different degrees. I did a degree in history, geography, a degree
Oh,
in
I love it.
education, environmental experiential education, and then I also did a degree in the study of outdoor recreation parks and tourism, with a specialization in leadership, where I focused on my work was mostly of a social science aspect where I'm trying to understand how do we manage people within their environments. Whereas biologists look at how do we manage the environment. The problem with that being so separate from each other is that we're not dealing with the fact that human beings have such an impact on the environment that they're in. So we can't necessarily change the behavior of a bear, but we sure can change the behavior of human beings, and we certainly can do
Right.
it over time. Like in socially, culturally, we start to understand, yeah, you can't, hand feed bears or tie them up on a chain outside of the Banff Springs Hotel and think it's fun to take pictures with a bear. Like you can't do that anymore. But
Yeah.
if you look at historical records of places like Banff or Yellowstone, other places, I'm sure many, many years ago you could do things like this, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, that's wild to think about. But yeah, like that has definitely changed for the better. And we're becoming hopefully more respectful, though sometimes questionable. Um, so okay. You started your business, Bear Safety and More. I think it was formerly called Rec Safe with Wildlife. I love the rebrand. Like, I think it's very clear. It's really nice. Um, and would you say you focus mostly on bear safety or you focused on all kind of wildlife safety?
well, it's there's two parts to the business, right? The main business is Bear Safety and More, and that was primarily focused on on bears and other species, and it was primarily focused on like industry, right, and government agencies. trying to get training. But RecSafe was the concept of that program was to focus on the public and help recreationists learn how to be safer, not just around bears, but other species. So with our training, we definitely we teach people about grizzly bears, polar bears, and black bears, and we teach them how to use bear spray. But we also have courses where we teach people about cougars and elk and moose and fox and
Yeah.
coyote and wolves, which are all complex species in North America, which we can have encounters with. And in fact, more people get attacked in Canada and the United States by coyotes and cougars than they do by bears.
Yeah.
And ungulates, in fact, attack people a lot. Here in Banff, that's the number one animal that people get attacked by is
What
actually
did you?
elk.
Oh, elks. Okay. I thought you said, what
Yeah.
did you call it?
Oh,
Ungulates?
ungulates. Ungulates is a term used to describe all hoofed animals. So deer,
Oh,
moose,
okay.
elk. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love
People
it.
are like,
Okay.
what? What is an
No, but
ungulate?
I love learning that. I've never heard it called that
Uh,
before. That's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Okay, you just kind of alluded to this, but maybe you can help us define like the difference between a wildlife encounter versus a wildlife attack and how they're kind of different.
So wildlife encounter or even like a sighting, if you see an animal in the distance, but you're not having any type of interaction with it, it's not aware of your presence, it's not having any reaction to your you being in that environment, I would call that a wildlife sighting. A wildlife encounter is when an animal is aware of your presence and starts to show some behavior that it is not too keen probably that you're there.
Hmm.
So it might show some signs of stress. It might move off and leave the area. It might start showing some signs of aggression towards you, or even come towards you, basically trying to get you to leave. That what I would call an encounter. Now, if a wild animal makes contact with a person and the person is injured, then we would call that a wildlife attack.
Yeah.
Great question.
Okay. That's a good distinction. I think like kind of, you know, you told us about one of the wildlife encounter stories that you first encountered in your career. Sometimes wildlife encounter stories get sensationalized. I think they're still important to talk about, like, because it teaches us, like, how can we better prepare and prevent these kinds of encounters. But maybe talk to us a little bit about how common these stories really are for everyday like outdoor adventures, like having a negative encounter and or attack.
That's a great question. So a great way to kind of look at it is to observe people in their environment and how wildlife are responding. And how can you do that? Well, you can do it with wildlife cameras. And so a lot of trail systems in places like Yellowstone and Yosemite, Banff National Park, Jasper, Waterton, they do have these trail camera studies where they actually are able to put cameras at a level where they're not like seeing people's faces, but they can see that, like the usage of wildlife on the same trails as
Mhm.
people. And what we find is that these animals are all using the same trails as us. They're easy
Yeah.
movement
Path of
corridors.
least resistance. Yeah.
Right. That's right. And so they're walking down the same trails as us, but why are we not all running into them and having like, these encounters or sightings or attacks? And it's because most of the time these species are what we call risk averse. They're not looking to get into trouble with people. If they were so incredibly, carnivorous and dangerous and, predatory, then we would have a lot more people getting attacked. And so often when, a bear or cougar hears or smells someone coming down the trail, they get off the trail, they wait for you to walk by, and then they get back on the trail.
Mm.
And so the interaction levels are actually not that high. Like people have sightings, but a lot of people are able to move through these spaces and places and not really have any type of encounter, especially if they are making noise. If you're not making noise, then you are unfortunately putting yourself in a situation where an animal may not know you're there, and then you
Right.
accidentally come up and surprise it. And that's where more of these encounters that are negative, where they can lead to an unfortunately someone getting mauled or killed happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Like I've been, uh like doing getting outdoors for over a decade now, and I still don't think I've ever seen a mountain lion, which are, I was in California a lot and there's tons of them out there. But I mean, I would see evidence of them sometimes, like you could see a little paw print or something here and there, but like never when I was out there would encounter them or see them or have a sighting or anything like that. I did see sightings of bears, especially closer to towns, in areas in the Sierras, like near Mammoth, we would see sightings of bears a lot. But that kind of makes a little bit more sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll add to that that although for the most part, most wildlife move off, human behavior plays a big role in animal behavior. And
Mm,
so, for example, like Banff National Park, we just had a wildlife encounter where somebody was walking down a trail by themselves, and this grizzly bear was walking down the trail in their direction. So they're like, oh my gosh, there's literally this big grizzly bear walking straight towards me. And he
yeah.
got his bear spray out and he backed away and talked to the bear calmly. And eventually the bear was not interested in him. He was like, I'm just trying to get from point A to point B. So we
Yes.
sometimes see over time is if a bear spends a lot of time around areas where people live or they recreate, like when you have millions of visitors to certain trails, it unfortunately gets the bear to a point where they're like, you know what? I don't feel like moving off the trail anymore. I'm trying
Mm,
to get to this area over here that has some really good berries. Like you guys should just get out of my
yes.
way.
Yeah.
And so they'll walk down the trail and they'll expect you to get off the trail. And
Yeah.
so people are like, oh my God, this bear is trying to kill me. I mean, it's actually just trying to get somewhere. So I always like to differentiate that if you are in more of a front country
Mhm.
environment instead of backcountry where bears might have high exposure to people, like you said, mammoth is a great example. You're going to sometimes have that where a bear is just indifferent to human beings, or even just sits
Right.
down and starts eating berries. And you're like, I'm trying to go down the trail. And the
You're
bear's
like,
like,
cool, cool. I'll just wait. I'll wait.
yeah,
It's fine.
yeah.
I
You're
feel
like,
like
okay.
this is like my main experience I have with moose, actually. So I see them a lot in Colorado now. This is where I'm based out of currently. And we'll be on the trail and you see a moose and he's like right where your trail is going by. And you see them from far away. They're pretty big creatures most of the time. And whenever we're like, okay, should we wait them out? And there's no waiting them out. They'll just stay there for like ever and just hang out. And so we end up having to go really off trail to like just give them a wide berth. We're like, we don't want to have a negative. We're all friends here. We're just trying to go this way, But I feel like that happens to me the most with moose. They're
That's
like,
funny.
I'm here, so I don't know what you're
Yeah.
gonna do.
Yeah. And you did the right thing. You gave them some space and you did like you said, just make kind of like a go, like give them that wide berth, go around them, and then you keep going. So and you would do
Yeah.
that with bears too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or sometimes I just like see what path they're walking and I'm like, I'm just gonna stay to the side and let them pass for a while.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
actually is a really kind of like good segue into the next question I have for you. As hikers and backpackers, we do have to accept a level of uncertainty, and even climbers, if you're going out into the remote backcountry in any capacity, we have to accept a level of uncertainty and then do our best to like mitigate our risks and prevent encounters and prevent unwanted encounters. So maybe before we get into prevention a little bit, what are some of the most common causes that escalate a wildlife encounter or attack to occur?
Sure, that's a great question. So a group of biologists got together a few years ago and actually tried to answer this question, like why do people get attacked by large carnivores in
Yeah.
Canada and the United States? And what they found was about 50% of the time people were doing risk enhancing behaviors, the wrong thing that actually got them attacked. The other 50% was just wrong place, wrong time. And that
Hmm.
can happen where we can have an accidental kind of situation or like we had an attack in Banff National Park, unfortunately, in 2023, where two people were backcountry camping, and they were unfortunately attacked and killed by a predatory grizzly bear. And in that environment, bears have less experience with people, and unfortunately, they were perceived as vulnerable alone and as a food source. But that is extremely rare behavior, especially for grizzly bears.
Yeah.
The other 50% is the stuff that we can control. And so the number one cause of people getting attacked by large carnivores is leaving children unattended.
Hmm.
So we don't have to worry about that when we're solo.
Yeah.
Don't bring kids. That's actually a good. It's even better. You can like, sorry, I can't bring you. It's too high risk.
Yeah. Especially in certain areas.
Yeah, yeah. The next one to that is a really interesting one, which I don't think a lot of people would think would be a cause of attacks. Would be, in fact, keeping your dog off leash. And a lot of
Yeah.
people will go solo, but they'll bring their dog because it's like nice
Yes.
company. And I think a lot of people think like, oh, my dog will alert me. It'll let me know if a bear comes. It'll scare the bear away. I'll be fine. But the stats are actually showing us that we're seeing a rising number of attacks by black bears and grizzly bears on adults when they have a dog off leash. And what
Yeah.
happens is the dog, usually is how it works, is the dog runs ahead on the trail or off into the forest and like smells something, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's my new best friend. And they'll run up on like a black bear with cubs, and the black bear's like, get away from my babies, or the grizzly's like, get away from my food, and the
Right.
dog's like, but I want to be your friend. And then of course the bear gets really upset and they chase the dog. And then any ideas on where the dog goes?
Yeah, back to its owner. Of course.
Exactly. And then you're like, oh no, what's happening here? You see this dog bolting at you, and then behind it is a bear in full charge. And what happens is the bear then sees the person and they think that they're an even bigger threat, and then they attack the person, and then
Yeah.
the person gets mauled. So if you are going to bring a dog with you, I would highly recommend you keep it on leash, and especially if you can avoid bringing dogs that are highly reactive to wildlife, it's better to leave them at home.
Right.
The next one is actually related to hunting. A lot of people who are out hunting, they'll shoot an animal and they'll go to look for it, and then a grizzly bear will have found it before they got there, and then they're like, "No, this is
Mm.
my elk. You can't have it." And then they attack the hunter. And then the
Mm.
other one, which is important for those of us that are out solo, is that carnivores are more active when the sun is rising and the sun is setting. So trying to make sure that you plan your day so that you're already at your camp before that sun is setting, and not
Yeah.
leaving camp until sun is actually risen.
Yeah.
And I know that can be tough when you've got a really big day ahead, but if you can avoid it, do it. If you can't avoid it, just make way more noise. Just be
Yeah.
way more observant, because these carnivores are actively out hunting and they could misidentify you as a prey species. And then the
And
last to
you're
that
not
one
able to
is, yeah,
be as alert either during those
no,
periods. Yeah.
yeah, you can't see as
You're more
well.
visually
It's
impaired.
just
You're, yeah, hearing is a little bit off. Yeah.
absolutely. And then the last one is just approaching a female with young, which
Yeah.
sometimes people think is a really great idea. This guy
So
in
surprising. I
Utah,
feel like that's the
yeah,
most one that we all know, but like, yeah, but still people get it wrong.
no. This guy was solo running in Utah a few years ago, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, there's bobcat kittens on the trail." And I don't know why he thought it was a good idea to take his phone out and try to video it and run at them, but he quickly realized that it was actually cougar kittens. I wouldn't approach bobcat kittens either. And a female cougar came lunging out of the forest and lunged at him and bluff charged him for 6 minutes. And he has a
Was this
video of
that
himself
one where he's
backing
like
away.
running backwards filming the
Yes.
whole time?
Yes.
I just like, for one, I'm like, dude, I just like it is pretty incredible that he got it on video, but I would
Yeah.
I would have sacrificed that phone just to focus. Like,
Yes.
I don't know. I didn't
Yeah,
know
I
that.
know
I
it's
didn't know
nuts.
that the pre-story was that he ran up to some cubs. I
He
just
did,
kind of knew
unfortunately.
the video. Oh yeah. I mean, just like literally any baby wildlife animal, it's scary enough, like being a baby in the wilderness. Like, just give them space, and also mom will be pissed. So it makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I lesson learned there for him, and thankfully that cougar decided, oh, you know what, I'm too far away from my babies. I'm gonna head back. So
Yeah.
these are all things that are not hard asks of human beings,
Really.
right?
Yeah, they really aren't. Yeah. And I think I remember you talking about the dog on leash or on leash, off leash
Mhm.
in the very first summit that you attended at the Solo Adventure Summit and spoke at. And it was something I had not really thought about. I have always kept my dog on leash anyways because I have a tiny Italian greyhound and I'm just
Oh,
like that thing is going to get snatched by a hawk if I am not close by. So, um but it makes so much sense. And even if you have a dog with a really strong recall, which is a lot of the problem sometimes with off-leash dogs, is like owners don't really have proper control of their dog anyways. But even
yeah,
if you had a dog with a strong recall, you're still potentially bringing that like animal encounter back to you as your dog
yeah.
is being recalled back to you. So it's just like gives people something to think about with on leash, off leash sort of situations.
It's
Um,
absolutely some food for thought. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit, we mentioned earlier, any kind of outdoor adventure demands that we accept and prepare for uncertainty. And we talked about that a little bit already. I want to leave our listeners with some advice and maybe some safety tips that they can take away for reducing unwanted wildlife encounters. But before we get into those tips, can you maybe share why prevention, first and foremost, is probably our like most important step beyond the personal safety of like an attack?
Yeah. So we really focus on prevention because a lot of the cases that happen where people do get attacked by bears was because they weren't following these very specific habits of avoidance in the first place,
Yeah,
which led to that situation. When people get attacked by some of these carnivores, unfortunately, it does lead to that animal also losing its life because they
right.
track them down and they kill it. There are certain states in the U.S. and places in Canada where if an animal makes contact with a human being, if even if it's the human's like fault, they're still going to kill it, or they're going to relocate it, which they may die from that, or
Yeah,
they get put into a zoo. So it's a conservation aspect, and also just like it's like I get calls, unfortunately, and I'm sure this summer I'll get a call from the media and they'll say, "Hey, Kim, there's been a bear attack or a cougar attack," and they'll say, "Why do you think this happened?" And I'll ask a bunch of questions like, "What was the person doing at the time?" And often they would have been doing one of those risk enhancing behaviors that I mentioned,
hmm,
and also like not carrying bear spray, which we can chat about as well at some point. But not having any preventative like tool that even if you got into an encounter, you would be able to manage it and be able to get out of it.
right.
And no training. Like people just, if you know anything, you know nothing about these things, and you get into a situation, your body is going to take over, and you're going to have either a fawn, a flight, a fight, or a freeze response. And so you got
Yeah.
to train it into yourself about how you're going to behave, and you've got to work through those scenarios, not just with wildlife, but other things. Like, I said to my brother the other day, I said, what happens if you're out, in the backcountry and you're like, you're so far into the back in the middle of Alaska and one of you gets impaled by a branch? Do you even have a tourniquet? Oh
Hmm.
no, I don't. I'm like, what? Like
Yeah.
you need to have this stuff so that in the worst, even though the chance of this stuff is really low of it happening, the consequences are too high to take that risk. So you have to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
It's like our seatbelts. We don't like not wear seatbelts, even though we most of us drive every day and we're fine. We don't get into a car accident, but statistically, it's the one of the number one things that's going to kill us. If could be a car accident and just driving to the trailhead. But it's there in case something does happen to prevent us from the carnage that can occur when you don't wear one.
Yeah. I totally agree. There's a couple things that you said there. One of the things I talk about with my clients all the time is like my biggest thing to teach them is prevention for a lot of the things that they're most worried about. Like, let's prevent some of these things happening. Like, so sometimes we'll get asked like what survival skills we teach, and it's like that isn't our biggest focus in like our backpacking badass program because my goal is to get you to the point where you prevent the use like some of these hardcore like Bear Grylls styled, survival skills. Having a good knowledge of them, like some backup things that you can do or redundancy in your safety systems, I think is super key. But prevention is always like our first line of just having a really positive experience. And then there was something else that you said, mention about even having training with some of the tools that you bring and safety tools that you bring. So, like with the bear spray, what also comes up is a lot of people, especially to solo hikers, they'll say, carry a gun. And I'm like, most people do not have the training or background where that would even be a safe thing to even consider bringing with you. And that it's a conversation I had with Nicole on the podcast recently. But yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of that too.
Oh yeah, for sure. And in Canada, we have a lot of restrictions on carrying firearms. Like we're not allowed
Yeah.
to carry them in national parks or provincial parks. We have a lot more restrictions, the type of firearms we can even carry. So you don't generally see too much of that up here. But I do like when I'm on a lot of the like Facebook groups and stuff for people that go on the trails, everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm carrying a gun on the Colorado Trail. I'm carrying a gun for this. And honestly, most people seem to be carrying a firearm because they're worried about other people than they are about bears, right?
Yeah.
The whole bears versus man thing. So,
Yes. Yeah.
um,
Obviously, you chose the bear
yeah, obviously,
for like the
yeah.
last. I love it.
The reality with a firearm is the chances of you actually getting it out, getting the safety off, and getting a kill shot on a carnivore like a bear or a cougar is extremely low.
Yeah.
It
Because
it
your
takes an
adrenaline is
average.
so pumped up too. Like you have to have a lot of training and practice in those kinds of scenarios, not just like I go to the gun range and I practice and I'm very calm and there's like nothing happening, right? Like it's so
Yes.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no time for that like deep breath, let all the air out, and then
Yeah.
shoot.
And
It's just
aim
not
and
like that.
focus. Right. Yeah. It's just so
Yeah,
different.
it's
Um,
not going to work. Yeah, and there actually are studies to back this. We've looked at hundreds of cases. Dr. Stephen Hurrow and Dr. Tom Smith, who are well-known bear biologists in Canada and the United States, have looked at hundreds of cases where people have tried to use a firearm in encounters with black bears, grizzly bears, and even a few polar bears. And unfortunately, majority of them were mauled or killed by those bears, and they never got their firearm out in time. Or even if they did, they shot themselves in the leg, they maimed the bear, they shot the person they were with, or they just totally missed. So and it took an average of 4 shots to kill a bear. So I mean, this is not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I just thought that was worth pointing out because we just
Mm-hmm.
got Nicole's perspective on like unwanted people encounters just prior to this on the podcast and then like getting your feedback I think from people like who are hearing this constantly on social media, which is just frustrating sometimes, but I think it's good to kind of do a little bit of myth busting. One thing I'd love to like get your thoughts on is in the Eastern Sierras, like particularly in the Inyo National Forest area. I remember because I backpacked out there a lot. My very first time when I was doing my first solo trip, I think this was like 2014 or 15. I went to go pick up my permit because this was like back in the day when you go physically pick up your permit. And
Wow.
I know, right? 2020 changed a lot of things. And the ranger was giving me the whole spiel about everything. And I had bear spray with me. And he told me that it was illegal to carry in your national forest. And I get the reason why they do it out there. Now, having backpacked out there, like I have never had a negative encounter or even that many encounters. Like I told you, mostly in Yosemite or
Mm-hmm.
Mammoth, where it's very like popular and busy. But I'm curious your thoughts on like on that because you are definitely a pro bear spray kind of gal.
I sure am. Yeah, yeah. It has been somewhat frustrating seeing that difference where, places like Yosemite have banned it. And clearly there's a reason why. They've probably had a lot of mishaps with people using it as a weapon,
Yeah.
or accidental firing or spraying it on their tent. Like, I mean, there's lots of crazy stuff when there's miseducation on it. And it's sad. I'm glad nothing has happened where people have been mauled and they didn't have bear spray. But what happens when something like that does happen? They'll have to really rethink and relook at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, studies again have shown bear spray to be highly effective. Dr. Tom Smith and Dr. Stephen Hurrow, again, they did the original study on looking at does bear spray work and how effective it is. And they looked at 72 cases in Alaska where people sprayed black bears, grizzly bears, and even a few polar bears. And again, they found that they found 98% of those people walked away with no injuries. So
Mm. That's pretty
98%, that's
powerful. Yeah.
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
very powerful. Like it's
Mhm.
telling you this is a tool like I should learn how to use and
Yes.
come prepared with. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I do really recommend trying to get like there's actually training cans you can buy. And some of the retailers will actually like you can buy it where you get your real can and you get a training can with it. And
Oh
I
yeah.
I really recommend trying it out because like you wouldn't believe how many people, I mean, I train thousands of people on how to use bear spray every year. And there is like every time I do a class, someone sprays themselves or they get their hand in front of the nozzle where it's coming out and they don't realize. So you don't want to be standing in front of a bear trying to figure out how do I get this thing off and how far does it actually spray? Like you need to know all of this before you get to that level, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to out myself a little bit. This was back way when I first started backpacking. So like 2013 or 14, I got my
Mm-hmm.
first bear can spray and I was like, I wonder how this works. And I like went out on my apartment balcony and sprayed it and then realized that was a horrible thing to have done like in a public area and a public space. And Michael and I felt so bad because he was with me when I did it. And we were like, we should not have done it. It was way more powerful than I expected, which was good to kind of get familiar with and learn. But at the same time, I was like, maybe not apartment complex balcony to practice in. I love, yeah, that you mentioned they have training cans that you can
Yes.
do this with. That's so smart.
Yeah, I would recommend that. Some people will use like their old can if they have an expired can. They're like, "Oh, I had this can for 4 years. Maybe I should do something with it."
Yes.
And if you do decide to use like a real can and it's expired, go to a place that isn't going to be where people could be walking by or in a campground. Because when you spray bear spray actually on something, it becomes an attractant. So let's say you were to practice spray on a trail or in a campground, it could actually attract a bear to that location and they would roll in it. When it's in the air, it gets into the mucous membranes and it's very painful. But when it's on the
Yeah.
ground, it actually can attract a bear to you. So
So
that's
this is
again why. Yeah.
an interesting question. Actually, I've had people ask me
Mm-hmm.
this before. If you were to keep a can of bear spray in your tent at night,
Mm-hmm.
is that an
Mm-hmm.
attractant or is it too like, you know, airtight is what maybe the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine to be inside your tent. I personally do carry my bear spray inside of my tent when I go to bed at night. It just makes me feel so much better. And
Oh,
also,
for
what if a
sure.
bear does come to your tent? Like you're in there, like in
You
this
want
little
to
like
have it.
like pita pocket kind of thing happening. So like you need to get
Right.
out of there.
Yeah.
And actually a really nice, a kind of really great tip I got. I was doing some work at the University of Fairbanks, Alaska, and they have this whole team of like they're taking the students out to do field work, and because there's such incredible density of grizzly bear populations in Alaska, that the students like where they put their tents, they literally every night have bears rolling, like basically roaming through, and they'll have bears walk right next to their tent. It's
Mm,
very unnerving.
yeah.
And so they came up with this idea of like having high powered emergency level flashlights in their tents with them next to their bear spray. And then if they hear something outside, they unzip the tent and they shine the light into the bear's eyes. And the bears, it's painful for them because it's such a high powered flashlight. They don't like it and it actually dissuades them and they actually turn and they leave. Now, I'd love to see a study on this, but
Yeah.
it's been highly effective and they've been doing this for years now. And honestly, I don't want to lie inside of my tent, Allison, wondering if there's a squirrel outside or a grizzly bear. I
Right.
need to like deal with this because otherwise I'm going to have to go pee because I'm going to be so scared and I'm stuck inside my tent. So
Yeah.
I always recommend if you think there's something outside, take that bear spray, which hopefully is above your head with a glow in the dark clip on it, and your high powered flashlight, and unzip it and pretend you're like in the CSI show, like you're a cop. You got your flashlight in one hand and your bear spray in the other, and
Mhm.
and see what's out there and deal with it in front of you.
True. Yeah. I always do like some version of that where you unzip your tent and you kind of like spend some time adjusting, looking outside. You're like, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on out there? And I have clients super, one of the biggest fears they have is the nighttime piece, especially solo backpackers. And they say like it makes it really hard for them to go to sleep at night when, it
Mm-hmm.
gets dark and they can't see anything. And the idea of leaving their tent is terrifying. So one workaround we've kind of come up with in our backpacking badass program is like get a shiwi, like one of those pee funnels, and bring an
Yep.
empty bottle and practice at home, of course, but like pee in your tent into a bottle.
Yes.
And it's really nice. Like a nice option if you're really feeling quite scared about it. Um,
Very smart.
yeah. Not related necessarily to bear safety, but if you just are in your head about it, like it really does help. Okay, what is maybe the biggest thing you wish everyone knew about bear and wildlife safety?
I wish that people knew that the most amazing tool that we have as human beings is our voice. It
Mm,
is so distinct in their environment, and it really does give you a lot more confidence when you're out there to like do that. Once you get into the habit of making noise, like every couple of minutes, I just let out like a hoop or a holler.
yeah.
And at first, I think I scare some of the hikers doing it, but people get used to it, and then they're like, "Well, maybe I should be making noise." But like, why are we doing this? So the number one reason we like let out hoops and hollers every couple of minutes is to let bears and other animals know that we're human beings. So they distinctly know, hey, there's people in my environment. And remembering that these are risk averse species, they're likely going to want to move out of the area to get out of your way. The
Yeah, like it's
number,
an
the sec,
unknown.
you
They're
know,
like, that's a weird. voice,
Yeah.
like I don't recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the sound of a whistle or a bear bell, it really means nothing to bears,
Yeah.
but the human voice is extremely distinct, and most of us have the ability to use it.
Yeah.
The second reason that we make those hoop and hollers is to let them know the direction we're moving. So if they happen to be, let's say, down the trail around the corner and they're eating berries and they've got two little cubs, they can immediately start saying to those cubs, "Hey, we've got to get off the trail. Let's go. Come on, come on, come on. We got to go."
Mm.
And the third reason is so that we don't get into a situation where an animal thinks that we're trying to hurt it. And unfortunately for us, bears are defensive species. If you do surprise them at close range, if they have cubs with them, or if they're feeding on a food source, or you startle them and you're close by, they're going to think you were sneaking up on them. Whereas if you're making noise, they know that you're not trying to do that. They know that you're in their environment. And
Yeah.
this could really reduce the number of encounters and attacks that we see out there if people just did that one thing.
Yeah, wow. No, super powerful and so accessible, which I love too, because everyone, like we have our voices and we can use it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't require us buying anything super extra. It's just like something we have at our disposal. So I that there's actually a lot of parallels to like what you're saying about wildlife safety to what Nicole teaches too about like
Mm-hmm.
personal defense safety too, which she'll kind of touch on at she's also going to be at our summit as well. But I just
I'm
think that's
excited for that one.
really fascinating to kind of hear so many parallels between the human and the animal species, to be honest. Um,
Yes.
Okay, are there any different safety considerations you would suggest specifically for solo hikers and backpackers versus people in groups? Or is it similar? Maybe just give us some yeah, a little thoughts on that.
Yeah, there are a few differences. So, you will see it in like in bear safety literature from parks, that they'll say like travel in groups when you can. We don't see attacks when people are in groups of four or more. So that is something that we need to be more aware of, when we are out there solo backpacking, because we actually have to make more noise because we are by ourselves. We need to be more aware of our surroundings and not get complacent and not make noise. So it
Yeah.
is a constant. You will get used to it. You can come up with your favorite song you like to sing, or just like I just go like whoop every couple of minutes, just to let whatever's out there know. And if I am in a spot where there's high winds, or if there's a creek running by next to me, I just know that as because I'm alone, I have to make even more noise to let whatever's out
Right.
there know that
Yeah, good
I'm out
point.
there. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a big distinction. And also, that self-reliance piece of like, I have to carry bear spray on me. I have to let somebody know where I'm going and when I'll be back. I have to have a communication device that works where I am. So if something does happen, like, you don't have someone to go and call for help for you. You have to be able to do it for yourself. So having
Yeah.
things like, like a Garmin InReach on your body where you can just press a button in case you do get hurt by a wild animal, you have that piece. And I have seen over the years where people have been out by themselves, and unfortunately, they weren't making noise, they weren't carrying bear spray, and they didn't have an emergency device to call for help. And some of them were injured by bears and didn't die from the actual attack, but
Yeah.
died from exposure because they couldn't self-rescue. They couldn't get themselves out of that environment.
Yeah.
They needed someone to come help them, and they didn't, unfortunately, set themselves up for success.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so important. And we have like so many new tools at our disposal these days, like that we didn't have as much access to. And especially now, like some of these satellite SOS devices are more affordable than they've ever been. And even though sometimes like most of them come with subscriptions, a lot of them can be turned off if you're not in the season of like backpacking, getting out there solo, which is also really something to consider. Do you use an InReach Mini? Is that what you carry?
I used to carry Spot, then Garmin InReach, and then more recently, I carry a battery backup for my cell phone because my iPhone actually has that capacity now too, so I can
Oh,
call for
nice.
help, which is
Have
pretty
you
amazing.
have you tested that? Like, I know people are in my communities have been curious, and I'm like, I don't know 100% how like accurate or well it is working, but I know that people are using it.
Yeah, so I often have to go out into the field where I'm in more of a backcountry setting where I have no access to cell coverage. So it literally jumps right over, and it asks me to move my phone around to like so I can catch the satellite,
Mhm.
and then I can immediately send text messages, which is like mind blowing.
It is
So
mind blowing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
So
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, let's jump into, I mean, we have like so much more we could cover on this topic, but let's move into some fun rapid fire questions. This is just something I like to do with any of my guests just to get some little background info about you, share something fun. So, Kim, maybe tell us what's your go-to trail snack?
Oh, okay. This is this is for primo, like what wouldn't even call it snacks. This is like if I want to impress somebody or like well
Okay.
impress myself by myself, is I'll make I'll cook up some pulled pork and put it in
Oh
my thermos.
man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you
And
weren't
then
lying.
oh no, this is like primo, and then like bring the buns, but have them already cut, ready to go. And that way, like when I get to that like spot, like that perfect spot to sit down and have lunch, I literally pull that out, and it's like, oh my gosh, like you have this hot, delicious sandwich, and you're just like, you're in the middle of nowhere. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I was like, I think the most fancy I've ever done is like a backcountry charcuterie where you just bring like hard
Oh,
cheeses and stuff, and that's really good. But you just took it to another level. I'm very
next
impressed.
level. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, do you right now have anything like what's one or two things that are on like your top adventure bucket list?
Oh, yeah. Well, next year I really want to go to Italy for a bear conference, and I
Oh,
really want to go hiking in the north, and
are
just
the
get through
bears
those
similar
beautiful
in
mountains.
Italy as they are in North America?
It's
Like,
a great question. Yeah, they are. So we have 8 species of bears in the world, and one of them is called the brown bear. Here in Canada, we call them grizzlies. Same
yeah.
in the U.S., but then of course up in Alaska, there's an area called Kodiak where we call them Kodiaks. They're a little bit of a subspecies. So the brown bear exists also in Europe and Asia as well. They're in some of the most remote places that people have no idea. Like we have grizzly bears in the Gobi Desert. We have grizzly bears in Hokkaido, Japan.
Wow.
We have them in Spain. We have them in Italy. The population that's in the north, which is where I want to go, there's about 100 of them, and
Yeah.
they're actually originally from Eastern Europe. They've been reintroduced. There used to be grizzly
Mm.
bears in northern Italy, but they were completely killed off. In the area around Rome, there's an area called Abruzzo, where 30 minutes outside of the city, there's literally a bear population, and they would have been captured and taken to the Colosseum for fights back in the gladiator days. But yeah, no, it's wild. So
Wow.
I'm
That's
really keen to see that area for hiking.
Is
So
this like, yeah, you said like up near the Dolomites area of
yes,
Italy?
yeah,
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
man, that area
yeah.
is so beautiful. I went back in 2012, but I wasn't into the outdoors then, but I just remember being like
Mhm.
blown away. So I need to go back again to do some like more adventurous things. But
Oh,
that's really fascinating. That actually made me think of another question, which is kind of off of
mhm.
our rapid fire questions, but I'm curious your thoughts about kind of like what do they call it? Uh like reintroducing, different species. Like in Colorado, we just reintroduced wolves back into, our outdoor spaces. I'm curious
Mhm.
your thoughts about that. Is it rewilding? Is that the right term or
Yeah, reintroduction is a very wild and could be a term, but like yeah, when you bring back certain species, you actually improve their environment, the
right?
environment. Like Yellowstone is a prime example. They did a reintroduction of wolves, and they had fortunately it then of course helped to reduce the elk population, which is they were over browsing, and
Yes.
it was a terrible situation, and it impacted other species like coyotes started to grow in size, and it was just when you brought wolves back, you changed that whole environment back to what it's supposed to be like. Same thing with bison reintroductions, and reintroduction of species is becoming a more commonplace. Doing it in Europe is very complicated because of the amount of human beings, and as it is in the
Yeah.
United States too. Like there's talk of reintroduction of grizzly bears in Washington State. People are not very keen on that. People are concerned in areas around the Cascades about tolerance levels, and what if a grizzly bear walks into somebody's ranch, and what if it kills their livestock. So
Right.
reintroducing an animal, because it sounds great, but like in actual practice you have to have the commitment and understanding of the people that live in those environments. Like is there
Yes.
going to be tolerance, a willingness? You have to do a lot of education and prep before you do it, and Italy
Yeah.
didn't do that. Unfortunately, when they reintroduced grizzly bears, they did very poor public education. They didn't do any attractant management, because then all these bears are like we're in Italy? Like what I mean, if I was in Italy right now, I would be absolutely hitting up every restaurant I could.
Yeah,
Like
you're like, oh my
that's,
gosh, the pasta's so good.
right? And I'm sure the Bears are thinking the same thing. They're like, this is so much better than Eastern Europe. They're just like gorging on this stuff in the back alleys. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh my God, what were you guys thinking? Like, I'm all
Yeah.
for bringing animals back, but you have to make it
Have to
successful
have the
for them. And
buy-in
they
of the
didn't do that.
community. Yeah. Yeah, I read a book. I've been becoming really fascinated by wolves and like their impact
Mm.
and how they help ecosystems. And I read a book about this concept of like reintroducing wolves to Scotland because we went to
Oh,
Scotland a while back and there used to be wolves all over Scotland and then they went extinct. And this book was fiction, but it was just like it was about all the topics that you mentioned where they reintroduced the wolves, but they didn't quite have the buy-in of the community and like the farmers and all these things that kind of went
mm,
into it. And yeah, it was just like a really fascinating kind of touch on this whole concept of rewilding and like reintroduction and stuff like that. So,
that's
okay.
amazing.
I went a little off topic. Italy sounds amazing. Didn't know that there were grizzly bears there. Uh, that's good to know. What is maybe one big hiking goal on your radar for 2025, if you have one?
Oh, well, I'm in the process of trying to move back to the Bow Valley, where of course I will be back in Canmore and Banff and probably going back to some of my old favorite hikes. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
just getting back to the place I love in the mountains, it's just I'm a mountain person. It's where I'm meant to be. And
Where are you based right
um,
now again?
I've been for the last 6 years in Edmonton, Alberta, just a
Okay,
family
yes.
move. But recently, I'm actually going to go through the process of moving back. So I'm very excited about being able to like, maybe work all day, but then go for like an evening hike and
Yeah.
just having that access again
Canmore
will be amazing.
Canmore
Canmore for
is
sure.
so beautiful. I remember when we were in the van doing van life for a few years, we went up through Banff and then we were like, let's check out this town, Canmore. And we were both like, I would live here. This is so stunning. Like it's just really beautiful and cool, a cool town.
It is, and access is incredible.
Yeah,
Like
it's
you
crazy.
literally can walk out the door and you're on a trail. It's amazing.
Huge mountains too. Yeah, like everything about
Yeah.
that area is just like absolutely stunning. So I don't blame you. Um, what is your favorite piece of gear that you can't live without?
Favorite piece of gear. Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, being, a specialist in bears, I have to say my bear spray just
I know, I
because
was like, which way are you going to take this?
I will say bear spray for not just because of like because I know that potentially would have to use the bear counter and I know how effective it is. It's actually like a peace of mind piece for me.
Mhm,
Like I
mhm.
feel safer. I feel like I can go out by myself and do what I want to do because
Yeah,
I know that if something happens, not only do I have something that I know will protect me, I also know it gives me the confidence to deal with what's in front of me. Because, I talked about how people will often have like a fight, flight, fawn, freeze response.
yeah,
When you have something that you know can help to save your life, you feel a lot more confident dealing with an animal in front of you. And I have met many a bear on a trail. I've done everything right and still had an encounter. And, of course, having bear safety knowledge, I knew how to kind of talk my way through it and look at the type of encounter I was in. But the fact that I had that bear spray, I knew that no matter what, I would have that option to use it. And it's a game changer. It really
yeah,
has helped me to get outdoors.
yeah. I love that. If you weren't studying bears, what would you want to study?
Oh, food.
Food. I love that. Like a culinary,
Yes,
like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. If I if
Nice.
I could, yeah, if I could live in another life where I wasn't where wildlife didn't need as much help as they do and
Yeah,
people, I would love to learn to be a chef. I'd love to travel around and get to eat all the amazing food around the world, which I
yeah.
still think I'd like to do that anyways,
Yeah, I
but
mean, why not a little bit of both? You could, it sounds like you're a little bit of a culinary artist already because of your backcountry trail snack was like next level. But
exactly.
yeah, I love that. And then last question, what is your favorite way to celebrate after you go on like a really big adventure?
Oh, well, I mean, a shower is the best thing in the entire
Oh my
world, but
gosh, yes.
I
There's
mean,
always that
if you're,
debate. Would you rather have a shower or like a big pizza or something?
yeah, yeah.
I'm one
Well,
of
I
them.
absolutely love jumping in a glacier lake after a big hot like hiking
Mm.
day or adventure. That's the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually, out to like the local pub for something to eat, of course, is always a wonderful delight. So,
Yes, I love that. Also, me like just putting on a pair of like sandals too. Oh, the best. It
oh
sounds so
yeah.
simple, but it's like one of my favorite things.
Yeah, yeah. If there's like water when I get to the trailhead anywhere, like a creek or a river, it's like instant pulling out like the flip-flops and like
Yep.
I'm going in the water. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. All right. As we wrap up this episode, I just have a few kind of closing thoughts I'd like to get your opinions on. Is there one common wildlife myth that you wish you could bust once and for all?
Uh, I think it would be that all bears are dangerous predatory animals. I think that we've really been taught by our culture, by the media, by television and movies that these animals are out to get us, when in fact they're just trying to make it through another day on this planet, just like us.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful. And y'all, Kim is going to be this at the time of this coming out, it will be the week of our Solo Adventure Summit. And Kim will be presenting at our Solo Adventure Summit on wildlife safety for solo hikers. I believe her presentation is on our June 5th. So it's June 5th and 6th is the Solo Adventure Summit. She'll be presenting June 5th, I believe at 3 p.m. is what I have written down here. You do not want to miss this opportunity to learn more from Kim, get some more advice in specific with going on solo adventures as well, and being able to like ask her questions. We always usually have a little bit of time for some Q&A. Her presentations are always so amazing, so informational. And yeah, there's so many other ways you can also learn and connect with Kim as well. Kim, where can our listeners connect with you and some more of your resources?
Sure. Well, our company is Bear Safety and More, and you can go to our website, bearsafety.com. You can absolutely find us on Instagram and, of course, Facebook. And we do have a YouTube channel where we've got some great recordings of some amazing speakers, different wildlife biologists that have come on and talked to us about those animals and how to be safe around them. We've got one on dogs and first aid, and just trying to get people really wrapped around the idea of how to behave around all these wildlife, which of course we're going to talk about at the summit, which will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, amazing. And I will link some of those key resources that Kim mentioned in our show notes, as well as a link to register for free for our Solo Adventure Summit if you want to learn more about that. Thank you so much for your time, Kim. This was such a fun conversation. It was really like amazing getting to know you a little bit better and to share all of this information with our listeners. Thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome.
All right, y'all, that is the end of our episode, and I will talk to you next week. Bye. Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.